Hello and welcome to the JCN Clinic podcast show. I'm Jessica and today I'm joined by Eloise Hyne, who's one of our new practitioners at the JCN Clinic. Hey
Hello.
Eloise.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I'm so pumped to do this episode because today Eloise is going to be sharing her background, her health story, what led her to nutrition, and it'll be quite an organic chat. And Eloise and I really have only just gotten to know each other over the last month or so. I'm bad with time. I'm just going to throw a
Yeah.
month or so on that. Does that sound about right? It's gone
Yeah,
so
around
quick.
that time. Yeah.
Yeah,
But it has
yeah.
gone quick and there's been a lot that we've covered.
That's it. So I know a little, but this is also going to be new to my ears as well. So it's going to be, yeah, a really interesting chat. So I thought we'd get started by first, we will dive into your background deeper, but I thought first just a little bit about how long you've been a nutritionist for.
Sure. Um, so I've got 8 years clinical experience. Obviously I've had my family in between that time. So I've actually been in the industry for a lot longer. So I started studying back in 2009. So did my studies, always kind of had my finger in the industry here and there, but I've been in the industry for a long time, but 8 years clinical practice, loved every minute of it. I definitely feel like life skills has contributed to that greatly, which has assisted, I think, the way that I approach my clients with their health goals. Having that kind of just lifestyle experience, I think, really adds to how you support somebody, whether it's female or, children, etc. Um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like when it comes to nutrition, and I feel like actually practitioners in general, there's a bit of a commonality where something has brought us to
Mm,
nutrition or to naturopathy.
yeah.
And it's not always the case. Like, it's been interesting over the years hearing everyone's backstory, but it is relatively common. So yeah, like I'd love to start there. Like, what was your igniting fire? What was the catalyst? Like, what led you to start down this journey as such?
Yeah. Look, it definitely wasn't something that was on the cards for me in my late teens. But I grew up in a fairly, I'll say, healthy family. My mum was always very into food. Cooking was such a part of my life. Looking back on it now, even as a young girl, I was always in the kitchen cooking. So, really had a passion for food from a young age. But it was particularly sort of when I'd hit my teenage years where, you start to get your menstrual cycle. And that's when those typical issues started to arise for me. Um, but they were quite severe. So I suffered migraines pretty much from the ages 16 to 20. Naturally, I think you go down all the avenues of trying to find an answer. Nothing really kind of hit the spot with anything definitive as to what was going on. So I'd always in the back of my mind had this, well, was it hormones? Is there some kind of imbalance? Then, along with my mother's inspiration, she was really into Ayurvedic medicine. So I'd kind of gone down that road and really made dietary changes and kind of cured myself in that sense that I wasn't getting those triggers. I didn't need to have kind of that medication approach to treatment. Then in my early 20s, I went and saw a naturopath and I was just in awe of what they were able to access with a textbook. So I originally started to study naturopathy and absolutely loved it. Loved the treatment approach of, assessing the whole body, first do no harm. But then I got 3 years into it and I was obsessed with biochemistry and how nutrients played a role in the body. So I just gravitated towards that. And so I didn't finish in naturopathy and finished in nutritional medicine. And kind of it's just been, yeah, it's all been food and nutrition and how that works in the body from there. So yeah, it's
Mm.
I don't have migraines anymore. It's not something that I suffer. So going back to, those times, it's kind of, you get those clients and you think, yeah, I was at that age. I did suffer through those. Having that experience really, I think, was the pivotal time for me to be like, I really want to help other people get through this. And how much diet and lifestyle can be a huge factor in the treatment approach for you.
Yeah, for sure. So and also interestingly, it sounds like you came from a family that was more open and potentially embedded in natural medicine. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Mum was at the time really into kind of traditional Chinese medicine, and then, that kind of led into seeing where the Ayurvedic mode went. She was a yoga teacher. So I think naturally I was raised that way, to kind of look into things a little bit more, and to try different things and see if there was any kind of connection. So I feel very blessed that I was raised that way. But it definitely had lots of years where, migraines, getting all the testing done, different medications that really did nothing at all. And then, in hindsight, looking back on it, realizing there was such a huge hormonal component to it, which was never explained, was really not a focus of anyone's treatment approach back then. So being able to connect the dots now is something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah, it's interesting you having that, I guess, family guidance there too, because I think you talk to, and you see it with clients, but then even talking to some of the practitioners at the clinic, like a lot of them have done that more sort of standardized medicine approach, but haven't had any sort of opening to it outside of that from a family point of view. Like it's been kind of finding it yourself. So it almost to me sounds like, because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost sounds like you were able to explore that a little earlier than maybe you might even see with your own clients, because it was something that was open to you, or like kind of on the table. Like I know even for myself, like I didn't even really think anything like that was an option at that age.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think having that conversation and having that support, that there was other options and that we would go down that road and, see if anything made a difference. And it absolutely did. And yeah, I definitely, in your initial sort of set of questions was, who is your inspiration? I do have to say my mother, because she's the proof in the pudding. She's fit as a fiddle. She's always put her health above everything else. And you can see that as a daughter, but also as a practitioner of, you put in that effort and the hard yards of how well you can support yourself through life. So, I'm very grateful that was supported as a young age.
That's so
and then
lovely.
I'm obviously passing it on to my 4 children as well. Much to their dismay sometimes when mum's not on board with everyone else's dietary styles. So yeah.
And how do you, I mean, I've got some other questions that I'll come back to, but just off that, like, how do you find now, just sort of jumping ahead, navigating nutrition in the family with kids, and like everything that and how you ideally want your kids to eat, and then their own little personalities? I always think with our industry, it must be like extra challenging with your nutritionist hat, and then like trying to like take that off if you can.
It is. And I almost think it's probably one of my greatest lessons in life, aside from, even as a practitioner, it brings so many, a skill set into this, because it's 2023, you've got factors and influences from every which way, whether it's on TV, advertising, kids at school. There's so many different elements of letting them fit in, not causing them any over thought processes with regards to food. And it was really hard initially, because you finish your qualification, you come out, everything's from a textbook, but how do you apply it to this life that we're creating? So I try and kind of scale it back and keep it quite simplistic and think, okay, well, there were times where I grew up as a kid, everything was kind of quite, I don't want to say balanced, but it was still accessible to us. So I try not to kind of emphasize that this is bad or this is good or you're not allowed this. I just kind of keep it quite consistent at home that, we eat well for various reasons, and try and be the leader for them. But also I'm still very understandable that they're kids and, there's stuff that they want to have because their friends have. And Halloween was around the corner, was recently. That's always a bit of a challenging one for me. But I let them do that to be a part of it, so they're not excluded from stuff and they don't kind of, then want to go the other way and absolutely gorge at everything, which can be the flip side of having maybe a practitioner as a mum who knows too much.
Yeah, so true. I have, I think I might have mentioned this on the podcast at some point, but I have a very close friend who was brought up with very strict parents around not so much nutrition. I think it was more naturopathy and some other modalities, but they were very stereotypically hippie. The food was pretty extreme, and until he was maybe mid-teens, he thought that ice cream was cottage cheese in a cone. Like, that's all he'd ever had. And he just got to his, mid-teens and rebelled. And just completely went the opposite way. And I know that's not, actually, that's when I mentioned it. We had Brad Leach on the podcast quite a few episodes ago, and he grew up in a very healthy family. And I asked him, like, have you ever felt a sense of wanting to rebel? And he hadn't. And I just thought that was interesting because, and obviously everyone's different, but for my friend, it was just like, what? Ice cream is this stuff, not cottage cheese in a cone? And then it was all on.
Yeah, look, I have tried to pass a couple of things as something else over the years, but I've definitely relaxed more because I think, you're trying to instill values, but they also have to learn to grow to make their own choices. And whether that's, if they're going to come across soft drink over the years or lollies, and just picking and choosing maybe better food options, I think is a better approach than being super strict with it. But my daughter sometimes goes, oh, you're just so healthy. And I'm thinking, okay, this is just who I am. But that's probably because, she doesn't get what she wants, but you can't always have what you want. And that's my job to guide them into better choices.
So I just want to jump back to your progression. Like, you talked about getting into like medications and so forth, right back to with the migraines, and then obviously that pathway. But you said you started changing your diet, and what a profound effect that had. I was curious, like, two questions around that. Like, with the diet, was it radical changes that you found you had to make? And then two, I was curious, because of the time frame here, because it was quite a while ago, whether there was, and you mentioned hormones, like whether at that point you ever did any testing, because I feel like testing wasn't even in our space as common.
No, definitely no testing. And that was sort of something that I think sat with me. It's like, okay, well, how do we figure out what this a perfect hormone picture is meant to look like? So that would have been sort of really 15 years of no understanding whatsoever about it. And, this probably would have been in my 19 or my 20s. So then, but I have to say, I was vegetarian from a young age. And whether that was, on those kind of pivotal times where your body kind of really needs those nutrients coming from, various B12, etc. I was lacking in all of that from when I first started my menstrual cycle, probably until I was maybe 20, 21. So things changed. I started eating red meat. I never really had an overly huge processed diet, but I just think possibly having those added nutrients through my body really helped me. Later down the track, I've also found out, with genetic testing that I'm MTHFR. So just needing that different form of folate, and then also the cofactors that come, So with my diet, I think leading into that style of Ayurvedic cooking, you're specifically focusing on legumes, very robust vegetarian kind of meals. There were specific foods that were focused for me and where I was, whether it was a pitta kapha, but, they're all very nutrient dense. There's lots of herbs, lots of spices. And noticed, and straight away, just everything felt better. Everything
Wow.
kind of, whether it was that headspace in your early 20s. It was a game changer for me. Whether it was, just making sure that liver was really supported. All of those factors really helped me feel better. So
you didn't actually cut anything out? Like, it wasn't like, oh, I've cut out
I did
gluten
cut out
or...
dairy. So then I went down that soy bandwagon for a while.
Yeah.
I did kind of try everything. Gluten-free wasn't on the cards back then. Didn't really kind of have an idea about that, but definitely dairy-free. That would have been about 3 or 4 years that I'd cut out of my diet. And then a real focus on those fruits and vegetables, and then incorporating the meat back into the diet was a big change for me.
Yeah, that's what I'm picking up. Like, it sounds more so... That's why I asked, like, about other foods that were potentially cut out, as far as whether there was other contributing factors, but it almost sounds like it was more of the Ayurvedic sort of changes that you made, but also like the nutrition density, and like for your body having the meat and the B12, and like just filling up your nutritional pool more. Which is
definitely
fascinating. Like, because I feel like a lot of... and for a good reason, but there's a lot of stories around health where it was like, oh, I felt really crappy and then I cut out gluten or I cut out dairy and that's all I had to do. And I'm not saying that those aren't really valid for a lot of people, but I think your dietary changes are really quite interesting from like a purely nutritional point of view.
And, even, like the foods that you kind of typically cook with Ayurvedic style foods, your ghee, all your spices, they're all quite, they're anti-inflammatory. There's so many different kind of nutrients through there. And and straight away, I just felt so much better. So that kind of really led me down the path of, okay, well, but also in the same breath, I was also kind of 15, 16, 17. It's hard to kind of get that real kind of not perfect style of eating, but even an awareness about those foods that you were eating at that time, whether it was, high sugar, packaged. I'm trying to kind of remember that far back now. But
it can get a bit like that, can't it?
I feel like, God, that was so long ago. But definitely my style of eating changed, and it just made a world of good for me.
And testing, I gather, like, wouldn't have been anything from a test point of view at that point.
No, I don't really even feel like there was a whole lot of focus on hormonal testing. It was that stock standard approach of going on the pill, and that was the contraceptive pill. That was essentially there to, well, we now know balance is negate any kind of thing to, subside your symptoms. But for me, that kind of led me down the track of, I did suffer through depression. I did suffer through just not feeling myself, very flat, anxious. And straight away, as soon as I had it, I was like, this doesn't agree with me.
Right.
You let that sit for a couple of months. Naturally, your intuition goes, hang on, that doesn't feel right. Okay, the doctor suggested another one. I think I gave it maybe 2 years, and I just said, no, this isn't the way for me. And then sort of started my own research on, well, how do I support that side of your cycle for, as a contraception? What can I do to to get that box ticked, but then,
Yeah.
you know, supporting myself so I don't have to go on that. That was kind of that was my little project in my early 20s. I used to
Mhm.
try and find every book possible to understand a bit more about how that whole area worked.
As far as, like, natural contraception and being able to have
Yes.
options outside of the pill.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of options back then, I've got to say. You
Yeah.
know, that was early 2000s. But yeah, it really just was my jam. I loved to understand about it and never went on the pill again, never kind of went down that road of any contraception. So yeah, I think
I
that really
imagine
helped me.
that would have put you quite in, like, doing that research on your own and learning about your cycle, and obviously from a contraception point of view, a lot about your fertility. Um,
Yeah,
it would have put you very heavily in touch with your own body, but also understanding your cycle and the female cycle,
yeah,
menstrual cycle overall, which I think
yeah,
again is obviously, yeah, so valuable. And as a young woman, something that most, like the average woman off the street, wouldn't have a clue about. Like, it's quite
yes,
empowering to know that
yeah.
information.
It's so empowering, and I think that's definitely a passion side of how I practice, because even now, you know, this is 15 years later, even 20 years later, it's sort of started to come up now. You know, there's a lot of focus on social media and different apps like Flow,
Mm,
or, you know, but it's not something that I think kids are taught in high school, which,
mm,
you know, as a mother of, I have a daughter and 3 boys, that this is something that I'll be really focusing on so she can kind of be more body literate with what is
mhm.
going on for her. But um, it's an interesting kind of path how I've gone through that. But then my own fertility journey, which I'd never mentioned to you, but it's sort of something that is quite um, it was a journey for me, like very into my cycle and knew where I was at, but I suffered so many miscarriages.
Oh, okay.
Um, and so that was kind of led me down into my next kind of genetic testing and into the whole MTHFR and really kind
Right.
of understanding my detox pathways and really focusing on my foods. But maybe we'll have to save that for another one if if you want to.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Um,
Yeah, if you're comfortable to talk about it.
Yeah. And it even now looking back on it, because obviously I've completed my family, but being a practitioner and having this skill set and this understanding of how we see it or as to what we can do to support it, but then you're still needing assistance with, um, you know, mainstream medicine, how we're still not kind of crossing over and really talking to each other about what we can both do to help,
Mhm,
which I even still now, it still baffles me that there is
mhm,
such a lack of a crossover between research or, you know, treatment um, treatment approaches to it, you know. So
mhm.
it's yeah, I'd love to maybe talk about that another time. Yeah, that was another journey, interesting journey with my cycle.
Yeah, for sure.
Totally help.
If you don't mind me asking just now, like,
Yeah.
I'm just curious, was that more prior to you had any of your kids, or was it throughout the process of having your kids?
Um, this so yeah, prior and then in the middle of as
Right.
well.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
obviously the middle ones I was a little bit older as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that was a big journey. But I was determined to. I was treated myself through the whole thing, and I really supported myself. And even while it was the complete opposite of what I was told, you know, I was still being told to take upwards of 5 milligrams of folic acid a day. You know,
Mhm. Wow.
which I'm sure even you just hearing that, you're like,
Yeah.
whoa, okay,
Yeah.
where do we go with this? So it was yeah, it was before I'd think I'd had, and because of course you can't get any testing done until you've had 3 consecutive miscarriages. This is so I had to go through that first before they started to
Wow.
really investigate what was going on. So
Yeah.
yeah, perfect
Wow.
timing to start my journey as a practitioner in a sense.
Yes. And like how, yeah, how much of another kind of experience that is for you to bring to being a practitioner. I like to have that
Yeah.
experience but the depth of knowledge that you would have that you could share from a practice point of view, let
Absolutely,
alone the
yeah.
empathy.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I can talk about it okay now. And I think probably 10 years ago, I might not have been so open about it because it wasn't something that people really spoke about. But there's, whether it's, people who've got a really high following on Instagram, there's a whole lot more dialogue out there about this space. I haven't heard a lot of practitioners being open about their journey with it. And I thought there's probably something I should share because I think sometimes you think, oh, well, you're so healthy. How did you go through that? Sometimes there's just other factors going on deep down inside of our body that we miss, and, going and doing that testing now that it's available is the best thing that we can do, I think.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that. I think it's a really important topic. And as you said, I don't think there's enough talk even in our space. And it's something that is so common that we see in clinic.
So common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that, sort of part of what you're just referring to, but with your own health and your own challenges and then going through your studies as well, like how has that shaped you in your practice? Like all of that coming together, like how has it sort of shaped you in how you practice and what you love to do?
Yeah, I think the combination of both of them, I think there is a level of empathy with someone also struggling, or someone that's got children and they're busy, it's that kind of that experience that I'm drawing in that I think really supports the clients that I'm seeing. There's a level of relatability that I think as a practitioner is important. So you're not sort of setting yourself aside that you're going to be too critical of them. We're all human beings. We all have really busy lives. It's trying to make these health changes as accessible for each individual person, which I feel like, given my experience over the last 15 years, I think has definitely placed me in a good position to be able to do that. And then also the driving force of really getting into something and really understanding the science behind or the test results. I think it's not obsessive, but it becomes part of you that you just really want to know the nitty gritty. And I'm sure even, when we went over those microbiome, it's addictive. You get a taste of it. And helping someone and getting success for them it's kind of the greatest gift you can give someone because it's a general well-being and genuinely feeling good, which is a great thing to be able to offer someone.
Yeah, it's so true. There's nothing I don't think no matter how many years you've been doing what you've been doing, there's nothing like that feeling. It's not like it dampens. It just continues to be a beautiful feeling to see someone feel better, for them to express that they feel better. Like it. Yeah, there's nothing like that feeling, is there?
There's nothing like it. Sometimes people say, oh, you're so busy with your kids. And I'm like, yeah, but if you have ever had this experience of helping someone with something that is really hindering their everyday life, it is just, you can't walk away from something like that. It's hard to move past and not ever try that again.
Yeah, so true. And what about like the sort of potential of focal areas? Like I think with, again, what we do, it's a hard one because it's so broad, particularly when it comes to nutrition. But do you have a natural pull towards hormones because of what you've been through yourself? Like, do you have a natural pull towards, like, I guess, the nutrition, particularly from a kid's perspective as well? Like, are there like what are those, if you had to say, those sort of like burning areas that you love? And I know it's hard because, and then everything's interrelated.
Everything is interrelated. In my head, I'm going, oh yeah, young kids, food sensitivities, behavioral stuff. But then also, like those different age groups of tweens as well. That's such a missed part of and that's probably specific because I'm there right now, but like
Mm.
supporting their kind of journeys with their own hormonal changes. Teens, hormones, definitely hormones from even young women who have just come off the pill with that PCOS, coming into
Mhm.
that fertility, pregnancy, postnatal,
Mhm.
perimenopause. But then that they could all be linked with kind of, that mental health aspect of it as well, which kind of crosses over then with the gut. So
Yeah.
all of the above.
It's so true. Do you know, I love
All
hearing
of
you
the
just
above.
showing like the complexity and the extent even though of the hormones there. Like I don't think I've ever heard this sort of shows again your own experience
Mm.
with your own health, but also where you're at with your kids. Talking about hormones from like a young teen age. Like
Mm.
I think that's a really, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I think it's such a valuable space that so many
Yeah,
like parents could do with help and guidance with for their kids, but probably don't
absolutely.
even think about it.
Totally.
Yeah, like wouldn't even
Yeah.
consider it. I wish I had that as a teenager. I think it would have made a
Yeah.
huge difference to have had guidance from someone like yourself, to be honest.
Yeah, it's another space that I think is it's often missed. And I think, it's like when we talk about the perimenopause, why wait till you're in menopause to kind of try and make
Mm,
those changes and I think sometimes with the tween space, that's kind of where I'm at. Well, how do we support their little nervous system or even their body's way that it's excreting, their little gentle things that we can do for them at home, or
mm,
offer some suggestions about what they're using on their skin. And, this one's a massive one that I think is often overlooked because, they're getting cheap stuff from the shops, people giving
true.
them everything. It all kind of plays a factor in how their body's being exposed to this extra layers of endocrine disruptors, which is massive at this particular age, I think. So yeah, it's definitely something I'm quite passionate about because
Yeah.
you do see a big this is where these headaches start for young girls, is
Yeah.
just kind of before they reach their through puberty. And now girls are going through that much much earlier than what our
Mhm.
generation did, which is just a whole nother um possible podcast.
Yeah. So true. What would you also say too? I was thinking as you're talking about that, say there's people listening who are like, "Oh my God, I would love to take my daughter or my son along to talk to someone like Eloise." Like, what would you say to them as far as it being the right time? And I guess to give it context, when we have sometimes we'll have parents come with their teenager to
Yeah.
the clinic and you can tell that the teenager just doesn't want to be there. They're just like,
Yeah.
they're not interested. They're sitting
Yeah.
there. And Rochelle's got this funny story about someone sitting with their hands crossed, slumped down in the chair.
That was
Just,
me. I remember being
yeah.
like that.
Like, how do you approach that? Like, as a parent, obviously you want the best for your kid. Like, how do you approach that to get them interested? Or is there a point where like you don't? That's interesting you're saying that was you because you still went on and you made change. So yeah, how do you
Yeah.
figure that out?
I think it really depends of and when I do have someone that books in an appointment for their child, it depends on the age. I say, is your child, would they be open to it? Do they would like to
Hmm.
sit in with this conversation, and we'll sit on a Zoom or face to face, and I can include them in the conversation and make the focal point quite relatable to them, whether I'm talking to them like one of my kids' friends, being really quite, I guess, relatable. But also I've had teenagers where the mum doesn't come and I'm just sitting there, and I kind of bring in snack ideas for them that I can use as like a prop, I suppose, and really kind of get down to the nitty gritty of how they start their day or what they like to eat, and then do the subtle, oh, look, this will be really good for you. And I think most of the time when they're coming to see you, they know that there's something that they want to feel better about.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's just a simple change of swapping a breakfast, let's just kind of focus on that and kind of really tailor that as well as we can. And then it might take a little bit longer, but just a little bit longer for their little brains to kind of adapt, because this is a whole new world for them. And they might not even notice that they feel like that just yet.
Yeah, so true. Yeah.
And if they're not kind of open to it, well, I think it's all the resources that you can offer for the parent to take home and use in their own time of when they find it appropriate.
That's a good idea too. That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Because I just think sometimes it's meeting. You see it even with like adults as well. Like maybe and it's always with good intention, but it might be someone wanting to bring they're having a really great experience. They're like, oh, I really want my husband to see you, or I want, or whoever it is, but they genuinely aren't interested in really it's kind of almost like they've been forced into it by a loved one. And then I think with adults, I always say, you have to want to do this yourself, but I can see where it's a lot harder. With kids and with teenagers. So it's just interesting to get that feedback.
Yeah. And I think, being a bit mindful that it can take that little bit longer, but, whether you're sharing stuff that you can find on social media that they kind of go, oh, yeah, that's okay. I think trying to be that little bit relatable with them, or whether you're talking about your own personal journey of being a teenager yourself, whether you're kind of feeling flat, and just highlighting those, if they are kind of having, soft drinks or high sugared breakfast, well, what can we do? Do you love sport? How do you feel when you're exercising? If I think just picking and choosing the right entry point, I think is important with kids.
Yeah, that makes sense. Relating, entry points and relatability to things that they enjoy in their life, like a sport or something of the like.
Yeah.
Excellent. So is there anything else that you wanted to share today in regard to your story, or anything else about your clinical experience to date? Obviously, I'd love to do another podcast where we could talk more about the hormones, and if you're happy to share your journey around miscarriage and kids, like I know listeners would get so much from that and be appreciative. But that aside, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think I'll add, we went over our kind of brief questions. I think I'm definitely a practitioner that, obviously as a nutritionist, you really focus on food, but even coming into this clinic and just really, the use of testing is so important with a treatment plan. I think sometimes, we try not to use it if we don't have to, but if it's kind of suggested, you think you've got these definitive answers, that they're so crucial in a starting point of how you can help somebody. So I definitely do love to use functional testing where necessary. And I think generally if you're coming to see someone, you're wanting to see results. And I think, I do love to do testing. So hopefully I definitely think with your clinic, people are understanding that is a focus for you.
For sure.
And obviously the practitioners that, you obviously bring on board, it is for them as well. But I'm also very realistic, and I think it comes back to that skill set of life experience. There's an understanding of whether it's busyness or, budget, everything comes into play. And then if the treatment approach of using testing isn't something that is feasible for you, we'll find other ways to kind of make it work and, go another approach. So, but it is always very focused on where they're at financially, emotionally, and their capacity, I think, to make it work for them.
Yeah. No, I love hearing that. Like, it's just, it's, it's the most, I think, important aspect of being a really well, there's so many aspects to being a good practitioner, but I think what that highlights is just really listening to where a client's at and meeting them with what they can do and having that adaptability to work with the client's situation.
Yeah.
And I was also thinking, as a side note, when you were talking about functional testing and your love of hormones, I was thinking about you as a younger you, like going through like books and working everything out with the cycle, like how much your like brain must love hormone tests, like all the functional hormone testing now. It just feels the best thing ever.
Totally. Like, imagine, I don't know when the Dutch test came out. It surely would have been.
It's been a while now. I'm bad with time, but
over a decade.
Yeah,
Because it was from America, and back then, integrative medicine wasn't as meshed well together, like I think in the US, that was part of kind of the way that their healthcare system, well, not the healthcare system, but that kind of practitioners. But I feel like it took a lot longer for it to come here. Is that your kind of understanding about it as well? We're very slow on the uptake, but I'm sure maybe the Dutch test was around for 15 years, but it was not in my realm or even, that's my battery alerting me. So yeah, like in an ideal world as a practitioner, you'd be like, yes, let's do this test, this test, this test.
Yes.
But that's not always feasible for everyone in their case, whether it's kids or adults or whatever. So, but the option's there, and it's amazing to have those tools.
Yeah, so true. And even for kids too, like with you mentioning that, like most of those tests, if it's applicable, can be so helpful for kids. Hormones a little different, like as far as like the age bracket for the Dutch, but
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, all of the stool and the oat,
the stool, it's like the best thing for them. Yeah.
So good.
I hope my battery doesn't go. So if I disappear,
we're good. We're all done, and we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Where can people find you on socials?
So I'm the Nutritionist _kitchen. My website is www.thenutritionistkitchen.com.au. I'm at the JCN Clinic on a Wednesday in person and telehealth, and hopefully to be there for more days in the future in 2024.
Absolutely. And I'll put those details in the description too of the podcast, so people can go down and have a little click. But yeah, this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for
I know
having
it's a
me.
lot to just open yourself up and be a little bit more vulnerable. So I totally appreciate it.
I'm an open book. I'm happy to answer any questions. So thanks for having me and making it so effortless.
Love it. All right. Well, thank you,
host.
everyone,
Thank you.
for listening. And yeah, thanks again, Eloise. And we'll chat to you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.